Welcome to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce and Zach Hewlett here again, and today we're joined by Aaron Jones. How are you, Aaron?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
You bet. Where are you calling from today?
So I'm from a place called Merthyr Tydfil in Wales. So Wales, if you think of Scotland at the top with the top hat, and then you got England there, and you got the sticky out belly bit in the middle. That sticky out bit is Wales, where I'm from.
There we go.
Perfect description. Great. I love
it. All right, Aaron. Well, start us off with how you ended up on a mission.
So, well, I grew up in the church. I was very fortunate to do so. But I didn't want to serve a mission. To the point that when I was a kid in primary, I used to sing the song, "I hope they don't call me on a mission," which I got in trouble for a few times. I was just a bit scared, I think. Looking back, I was kind of a homebody. I liked being at home. I didn't like the thought of being away for so long. And so when the time came, I think, my sort of conversion story was I was in my early teens, probably 12 years old, when I finally asked, is the church true? Prayed about it. And I got the answer that it was, which was great, which was brilliant. And I was like, so I'm probably going to have to serve a mission now. So I then from then I planned to serve a mission, but I felt I wanted to go to university first. So back then, you couldn't go on a mission until you were 19, and in the UK it's kind of difficult to kind of defer university for that long. It becomes quite complicated and quite difficult. So I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll go to university and then I'll go after. And it turned out it was the right decision for me because I had a health challenge, long-term health challenge that took over a year to sort out whilst I was in university, which had meant if I'd gone on a mission at 19, I'd had to come home and probably wouldn't have been able to go back out because it would have taken too long. So,
oh, wow.
Although that was my experience, I would still tell anyone that they should go as soon as they can, because the risk, I suppose, is like that period when you're sort of 18 and then a young adult trying to find your way in the world. There's temptation. There's all sorts of other things that can kind of knock you off your path. So I would still tell people to go, even though I was making an exception of myself, I suppose. So I went to university. I studied genetics, and I got my degree. But in the last year of the degree, I was doing a lot of lab work and a lot of practical stuff, and I just wasn't sure I wanted to do that as a job. It's very repetitive. So when you see like a movie where the scientist has this, he's wearing a cool white shirt and there's loads of white lab coat and lots of cool, interesting things going on, lots of colours, bubbling things, smoking things. In real life, it's really boring. It's really repetitive because you find this thing or you make this discovery, and then they say, right, that's great. Now go and do that another 100 times to make sure that it's not a fluke and that it is actually a thing that will work. So I was in the lab some days like 15 hours, just sort of every half an hour doing these repetitive things. And I was thinking, man, I don't know if I want to do this as a career. But I thought, I'm going to go on a mission now anyway, so I'll just kind of worry about that in 2 years' time and whatever. And I grew up in the Merthyr Tydfil ward is a strong ward, and I had lots of good friends in the youth program, a lot of good examples, and they all started going on missions as well. So by the time I left to go on my mission, there were I think 11 of us from my home ward serving in various missions around the world. It was an exciting time, and so as soon as I finished my degree, I hate saying this date out loud because it's a long time ago. It was in June of 1999. I put in my papers and I got my call. I remember it was the day of the solar eclipse in August of 1999. But that's the only reason I remember it, because there was a solar eclipse. It stuck in my mind. So, and I got the call, Scotland Edinburgh Mission, starting in the October of 99. And I was a bit surprised, to be honest, because according to my family history, I was Welsh and Irish. I had no Scottish ancestry. I half expected to maybe get a call to Scotland because, one, I've got family, ancestry there, and one of my friends was serving over there at the time. And I also put in my papers that I wouldn't mind learning a language, and I thought I'd be okay at learning a language. I spoke a little bit of French. I speak some Welsh, but they decided I needed to learn Scottish, so that's where I went.
Nice.
Very good.
What was interesting when I came home, and I mean, this is probably in the last maybe 10 years, my mother, doing our family history, found that we have a huge side of our family that is all Scottish. I had no idea at the time, and I didn't know the whole time I was in Scotland, and sort of that was answered, just not that many years ago, that I am actually, I can claim some Scottish ancestry as well as Celtic ancestry.
I love it. That's great.
Wow. Cool.
So we'll jump from there to post-mission, yeah?
Yeah.
So just before, well, it's sort of linked to that, I wanted to share my amazing idea that I had on my mission for returning missionaries. I called it the RMTC. So it would be an MTC for returning missionaries. So because, you guys probably still remember going home, it's a bit of an adjustment. Suddenly you see everyone the bright lights of the world. You're like, whoa, it's kind of overwhelming a little bit, or at least it was to me. So I thought, well, rather than going cold turkey, going straight home, this would kind of ease you into it. So rather than being on your own all the time, you'd start off with a companion who you just sort of gradually spend less time with over the period of a couple of weeks. And then music-wise, you'd start off just hymns and, maybe a bit of Motown. And then you'd start mixing in a few sort of secular things. And then by the end of it, thrash metal or whatever you enjoy. I think there's a market for it, but I didn't pursue it. So I don't know if there's any listeners who want to finance this, but, please get in touch and we'll see what we can make happen. So
yeah. So your concept, Aaron, is to simply learn how to sleep in again, and be able to sit and watch the telly once in a while, and just get used to being back into the normal routine. Yes. I like it.
So you go to bed at like 10:35, then 10:40, then so your bedtime gets later and your getting up time gets later. Just get you back in the, not too in the world, but back able to function in it.
Is there dating in your idea there too?
Well, I don't know whether maybe it'd be too soon, 3 weeks in, but maybe to be around members of the opposite sex and be allowed to do that, that would be good. And maybe the occasional hug,
to learn to interact all over again.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is weird. I mean, I remember when I went home, my parents decided they had like a surprise party on the church, and like after 2 years, I suddenly saw everyone I ever knew, in one place after being home like a day, and I was like, this is I couldn't handle it. I didn't like it. So
man,
it's a lot.
For timeline's sake, Aaron, was it October 01 that you got home then?
So it was November 01 I got home.
Okay.
So yeah, 01.
Okay.
See again, that's still 23 years ago. Wow. So when I got home, one of the members of the ward gave me some advice. His name was Ralph Pullman. Great guy. He served as a district president. He'd been a mission president. He'd been a stake president, a temple president, regional representative. This was a man of long-term experience and knowledge. And his advice to me was, take 6 months off. He said, don't do anything. Don't make any big decisions. Just get home and just enjoy life. And I loved that idea. I thought, this is an idea for me. My parents, less so. They said, no, get a job. So I found a temp job working for a training company for a few months. And my plan was to work this contract, save up a bit of money. I wanted to buy a guitar, because I had a guitar. And then I thought maybe I'll go to the States and visit some, old companions and stuff. I didn't know what I was going to do with a job. I wanted to get into computing, IT. I'd always enjoyed technology and stuff, and I had computers, messed around with them growing up. Yes, even that long ago, they were computers, just so you know. But I had no idea how to get into it as a career. So I thought, well, that was my sort of heartfelt wish. And out of the blue, just as that contract was ending, a friend of mine who had started his own IT training company offered me a job. I was like, well, I'm not qualified. He said, yeah, you'll learn. So I went to work for him, and I got qualified in IT, and that was my route into what has turned out to be my career.
Nice.
I met my wife about a year after I got home. We got married. Sadly, it hasn't worked out, and after 17 years, we were divorced. Not part of the plan. Yeah. But that's the way it is sometimes. Although we share an amazing son. His name's Moses. He's nearly 17 now, so he's doing his A-levels over here, which is one step before going off to university or whatever, and he's learning to drive soon, which is, time flies and wings of lightning,
That's right. Wow.
So after I worked for my friend for a few years, he decided to close the company and move on. So I worked as a at the local college as a trainer, IT trainer for a year. And then I got a job working for South Wales Fire Service. So over in the UK, the fire service they tend to be sort of geographic areas. So South Wales covers where I live, and there's about 47 fire stations in there. So I got various jobs. I sort of applied for a job there, got in, then they got a promotion, and I ended up working there for 18 years. In the end, I was managing the network there for so we look after the emergency mobilising systems and various other things. And then last year, I felt to get a change, so I now do a similar job managing the network for a UK government agency. That's bringing me up to now.
That's excellent. Good for you.
It doesn't seem a lot when you say it that quickly, but it definitely was.
It's a lifetime, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good for you, Aaron. That's great.
It is startling how long it's been, but how quickly time flies, right?
It totally. And the thing is, when you're in it, it seems you're sort of stressed and things happening. I remember I don't know if you guys watched the American Office, The Office, and I was rewatching it with my son now because he's old enough. And one of the characters says, "I wish I knew it was the good old days when I was in it." Because when you're looking back, you're like, "Oh, do you remember that?" But at the time, you might be stressed or worried about work or how do I pay for this? But you got to enjoy it while it's happening because those times go so quickly.
Yeah, very well said.
Well,
Great.
Andy from The Office said it, so I can't really take the credit.
Well done. That's great.
All right, Aaron, we'll take us back now to October 99, and we'll walk through. You can start the MTC. We'll go through companions, areas, however you want to cover it, whatever stories you want to tell.
Great.
I see something that's great, though. I see
mission flag.
See, you got this on your over there on your your cabinet. That's great.
Yeah, still got him. Still got him. Yeah, keep him close. I actually went through my through some of my stuff like I had in storage, and it was just good to get that out in some of my journals and stuff. To read through some stuff. I don't know about you guys if you were good at keeping a journal. I started pretty good, like for the first few months, and then I just sort of tailed off and like became every few weeks and every few months. And in my last 6 months, there was very little, content. So what was good about listening to the podcast with other people is it kind of helped jog my memory. So anyway, back to October '99. My journey to the MTC was pretty easy. My parents just drove me there because Wales to Preston is about 4.5 hour drive. So I was just, suitcase, back of the car, just kind of chilling out. Got there, took a few photos with my parents, and it was kind of weird to say, right, walk through one door together, hug your parents, and then you leave through that door and they go in. So I remember going upstairs to the dorms, and I remember looking out the window, actually seeing my parents' car leaving out of the Preston MTC driveway, and of course the windows are kind of tinted, so they couldn't see me. So I kind of managed to get my arm out and waved to them, and they sort of saw me and waved back, and that was it. I didn't see them for 2 years. So so I met my first companion. His name was Elder Fraser from Las Vegas, Nevada. And that was kind of my first kind of, not wake-up call, but like I never thought the church would be that big in the gambling capital of the world. And, it took Elder Fraser to kind of tell me, loads of members and temple and everything else. And I remember the first time I met him, he was just totally wiped out. He managed to snag the top bunk of our bunk beds, but he was just sleeping. But he's a really great guy, a really nice guy, and we got on well together in the MTC. One of the first things in the MTC was, remember I said earlier on, I didn't like the thought of being away from home. Well, I was feeling really homesick. Like the first 2 days, I was struggling. And I remember it was kind of the first time in my life that I can remember going to Heavenly Father and say, I need this and I need this now. You know what I mean? I was like, Heavenly Father, I want to serve. I think you want me to serve, but you need to help me because I can't do this. You got to take away these feelings. And Literally, the moment I got up off my knees, didn't feel homesick at all, and I never felt it again the rest of my mission. So it kind of was a testy build into me, like this is where I needed to be, and that the Heavenly Father was going to help me.
Yeah.
Although my dad did test that though, because my dad wrote to me every week. I have to say, he was the only person who did not miss a week. But what he did do every week is he would tell me how long I had left. So my first week in the MTC, I got a letter from my dad. First line, 1 down, 103 to go. That was his. So,
Oh man.
A weekly countdown.
Yeah. So he was
Yeah.
really supportive, but he did tell me every week. So yeah. But the MTC itself, I know some people struggle, but I loved it. 3 meals a day, no one telling you no one telling you to go away and other things, feeling the spirit all the time. And we got to go to the temple every week. I think the MTC had only been open, it's been less than a year by the time I went in 99. And they were still sort of working out a few things. Like our only time outside of the MTC was we went to Biazda Superstore and to the LDS bookstore in Preston. That was it. We didn't leave the compound other than that. So it was kind of sheltered, but it was great. I loved it. We were in the Edinburgh 1 district. There were two groups going to Edinburgh, so we had Edinburgh 1 and 2. And I don't know if they did it back when you guys served, but you'd end up like with maybe most of you go into one place, and then you'd have the odd 1 or 2 that were going off to some random country that they didn't have enough people to make a district of. So it was like us. I think it was like 6 or 8 of us going to Scotland, and we had a sister called Sister Tanon from Italy who was going back to Italy on a mission, and then Elder Amos, who was English, who was going off to Jamaica. And I was thinking, Jamaica? I didn't know about the church there. I thought we used to joke like the Word of Wisdom discussion would be an extra section for a very specific reason for Jamaica. But yeah, so it was. But we got on really well as a group. I loved the fact we'd study together every day. We'd share testimonies every day. It was, you kind of built a really close relationship really quickly, I felt, with your district. And we had our MTC president was President White. Now this guy, he'd been a mission president and he'd been a councillor to at least 2 other mission presidents. So there wasn't much he didn't know about missions and missionaries. But one thing he used to do every Sunday during the priesthood lesson, he would go through the White Handbook point by point, and he would give a horror story for what happened to a missionary who hadn't obeyed that particular rule.
Oh my gosh!
I found in my journal. So this is the 31st of October 1999. I wrote this down. President White was full of tales of missionary woe for those who broke the rules. Nobody died today, but there were 2 excommunications and a car crash.
Gosh,
It was crazy. I'm pretty sure I was kind of scared to death of ever thinking of breaking a rule, which I think was kind of his point. But yeah, you can find a rule in a handbook, and he'd know an elder or sister who had a very unfortunate incident for not keeping that standard. So
that's amazing. Goodness.
So 3 weeks in the MTC, flew and off to Scotland then on the train. I remember changing carriages because back then you were allowed to smoke on the train, and there were loads of people just smoking. I thought, well, I don't want my mission president's first impression of me to be that I smelled of cigarettes. So we kind of found we actually we were in the corridor because there were no seats. But we got to Edinburgh, piled in the minibus, you know what it's like, and off to the mission home. And we did this. I think they still do it now. You walk up Arthur's Seat or Pratt's Hill, and you kind of dedicate your time and yourself to the mission. And and then they put us to work. We went out on exchanges with missionaries serving in Edinburgh, out chapping on doors. I remember knocking on one door. There was a female deacon in the Church of Scotland. We didn't get in, and they didn't get very far. But I remember thinking, it's not going to be the plain sailing I hoped there was going to be in the MTC. I think there may be a few challenges along the way.
Right.
And then that evening we had a meal with President and Sister Clyde. So I remember President Clyde, the first thing he did was to teach everyone the correct way to say Edinburgh. He didn't want missionaries to say like Barrow. It was like, no, you have to say Edinburgh. It's like bread and butter. That's the way he was teaching people to say it. And I love Pez and Clyde. I had him for 8 months. They were both amazing leaders and examples, but they kind of had different styles. I suppose if I was to sum it up, President Clyde was a little more Old Testament in his approach, whereas President Wilkinson was a little more New Testament. You know, I was always on my toes around President Clyde. I was a little bit scared of him, to be honest. He was a lovely guy. He was really loving, but he was just a bit scary. And and I don't know if they still do it now, but back when we met our trainers, what they would do, they take us into the upstairs, that meeting room they had.
Yeah, that's right.
All the greenies would face forward, and then they'd bring in the trainers at the back, and the trainer would come up, point to the mission, and point to your area, and give you your tie. So and that still survived in your guys' day?
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I had my trainer was Elder Hart, Jared Hart from Missouri. Lovely guy, always smiling, so friendly. I loved him. And my first area was Kirkcaldy.
Nice.
I don't know if either of you got to serve in Kirkcaldy. So that's just above Edinburgh, over on the east side.
I served in Glenrothes in the Kirkcaldy ward. So
yeah, same ward. So at that time when I served, the Kirkcaldy ward is split into 4 areas. You had two sets of missionaries in the Kirkcaldy side, if you like, and 2 sets of missionaries in the Glenrothes side. And we shared a 4-man flat. Well, it was a 4-man house. And it was Elder Kenneth Larson was the district leader, his companion Elder Kinski, and then me and Elder Hart. And first area, it was kind of Kirkcaldy kind of reminded me of home in that it was kind of a smallish town, but a similar size to my own hometown. She was kind of very reminiscent of my own home. But I had some interesting experiences. I'll share. Let me start with what I've come to call the knife incident, if that's okay. So,
yes.
Few days into my mission, morning study, I'm sat on the couch in the living room. My companion is here. Elder Larson's over there, and Elder Kinski's over there, and I'm studying away. And then I look up and I see Elder Kinski has a kitchen knife in his hand. And I think, okay, well, that's normal, I suppose. And he sort of made a joke and mimed throwing the knife at me, in what he thought, I assume, was a humorous way. So I panicked a little bit, thinking, well, is this mission life that I'm going to have to kind of keep an eye on people? So I thought, well, ignore it, it'll be fine. And I carried on studying. And, within a minute, I suddenly felt like a wind passing my right eye, just sort of a whoosh, and then a clatter to my right. And I looked, and there's the knife. But I picked it up. I looked at my companion, looked at the knife, and my companion then launched himself on Elder Kinski to administer the laying on of hands. Let's call it that. Kinski, he was apologizing. He's, it was an accident. I didn't mean. I just let go. I couldn't help it. I chose to believe him, but I kept my eye on him for a while after that. He was an interesting character, Elder Kinski, but that was the night. That was the only time I was threatened with a knife in Scotland, and it was.
Yeah, we thought this was a Ned story. We didn't realize the Ned lived with you.
No, it was I was in the house with him.
Oh,
I started hiding Cutbury after that, to keep him away from him.
Goodness.
Yeah, so Kirkcaldy ward, there's probably about 100 members there. Like we said, there was the ward is split in 4, and luckily for us, our area had like 5 members in it, and they were all less active, and none of them wanted us to come. So we didn't have any DAs really. I remember having an amazing day when I was on exchanges with a Jewish lady named Mariah, who made us a 3-course meal. Me and Elder Larson, like homemade tomato soup, roast chicken, and that sort of made up for the rest of the time in Kirkcaldy. I didn't really have a DA, and I couldn't bother cooking. I don't know about you guys. I just made sandwiches and just kind of, that was it. Whatever I could do in a quick time to have a little sit down, that was basically me done.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. And I remember, because it was sort of Christmas time, they had a ward talent night, and as missionaries we thought, well, we need to build relationships with the members. Why don't we join the talent night? I could play guitar a little bit and sing a little bit, so we decided to write a song. Now what we did, you might be too young to remember the song, but it was a song called "Save Tonight" by a guy called Eagle Eye Cherry. It was a big hit in the late 90s in the UK. And
Yeah.
so we rewrote the lyrics to make it about missionaries and missions. It was called Pray Tonight. And we sang it. It went down pretty well. And it became a bit of a theme, actually. Throughout my mission, I would kind of rewrite the lyrics to songs and change the words. And well, I used to enjoy it, and a few other people kind of enjoyed it. But yeah, I'll talk more about that later, I suppose.
You may have started a strong tradition in the mission.
Oh yeah,
well,
definitely.
I know there were missionaries that did it before me. Like I can't remember the name of the two missionaries, but they did. There was a Beck song. He wrote the song "Loser" by Beck. Again, this is '90s probably, but they changed the lyrics to be about missionaries. That was a great song. So yeah, a few people did it, and I like to be part of that tradition. It was good fun.
Just so you know, Aaron, you need to check our YouTube channel, because some of those have been uploaded on our channel, so that you can re-listen to your creation. So check it out.
Do that after this. There's a few songs I remember that I enjoyed, so I'll see. Maybe I'll share some of the old ones. I've still got them on MP3 somewhere, I think. But
yes, that's fantastic.
Great.
And I remember one funny thing I remember with Elder Heart was we were walking past this small tenement block. It was only about 6 floors, it wasn't a big one. And from the top floor, we just hear this loud, Glasgow voice sounded. "Oh, you two, wait there!" And I looked at Hart, and I was thinking, "What's going on here?" And Hart was a decent-sized guy. He's about 6 foot. He played a little football back home. I thought, it's only one guy. We'll probably be okay. So the door to the flat's open. Out comes this guy. But he was tiny. He was like 5 foot nothing. I don't know if you remember the film Shrek, when Lord Farquaad comes down and then he comes up. It was literally exactly there. Every time I see that film now, it reminds me of this little guy. And he walks towards us, and I'm thinking, little guy. And then, quicker than you could say Walking Dead, these other people came from nowhere, and we were just sort of surrounded. And he didn't like the fact that we were teaching someone that he knew. I forget exactly what his beef was. So anyway, we were kind of backed into a corner. So I looked to my trainer for advice and guidance, and he said, "When I say go, run." So we basically just bust the hole through this gang of people and just legged it as fast as we could, and we gave that bit of area a wide berth for a little while. But yeah, it was my first experience, I think, and people wouldn't enjoy missionaries all the time. You know, you probably all have it, things shouted at the street and stuff, and yeah, it's kind of odd, but we survived. Yep. It was fine.
That's right.
And I didn't have a lot of time with Elder Hart. I literally with him for a month. So back in the pre-flood days when I served, moves were every 4 weeks. It changed in like the January of 2000. They went to every 6 weeks. Just because you can imagine that month for the mission president to get around all the mission and do everything he needed to do, it was hard work. So
yeah.
Yeah, so my second companion then was Elder Mark Manning from England. Really great missionary, super hardworking. We did a lot of tracting. This was, like I said, this was sort of December. We got a lot of callbacks. We got to start teaching people. We had a good teaching pool. We were progressing people towards baptism. I was thinking, great, this is what I wanted. You come on a mission, you work hard, and you get to see the results of your hard work. And then I got moved to Shetland. So so I was only in my green area for 2 months, two transfers, and then off to. I was told the mission president only sends missionaries to Shetland that he trusted. So I must have made a good impression on him in my 2 months that I was in the mission. I know
in the dead of winter, though.
Yeah,
in the dark.
I said I heard one. Didn't one of you say you served on Orkney?
I did, yeah.
Served on Orkney. Yeah. So in December, to get to Shetland, it took me 22 hours. So it was a 2-hour train ride from Kirkcaldy to Aberdeen,
right?
And that was the easy part. And then it was a 20-hour ferry ride, because in the summer it only takes 14 hours or so, because they go send Aberdeen straight to Shetland. But in the winter, to save something, they go to Orkney and then up to Shetland. So I got to Orkney for about 2 hours. So it was like 8 hours to Orkney, 2-hour layover, if you like, for whatever they needed to do, and then another 10 up to Shetland. And all this time I'm on my own, by the way. Back then, I don't know if they still do it now, but they used to save money by buying one return ticket. So the missionary leaving the island would have the ticket, and then he would sort of give it to the guy going up and have the return ticket to get back up to Shetland.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was so that's where I met for the first time Paul Williams. So Paul came off the island. He was like a baton. He handed me the ticket, and off he went to wherever he went. And I got on the back on the ferry. So you did at least have a cabin, like a shared cabin with a bed. So if you could sleep, that was, because that December trip was like you passed the mainland of Scotland and it was like a force 10 gale. So I thought, I just lay there trying to sleep and not to be sick, basically. I don't want to lower the tone of your podcast, but I did get told of one missionary who'd managed to sleep one particularly rough trip, leapt out of his bunk, fresh as a daisy, right into a puddle of vomit from the guy in the lower bunk.
Gosh.
And he was barefoot.
Oh man.
Wonderful. What a sensation.
So always look before you leap. That's what that was.
Look before you leave. There we go.
That's great advice.
So I get to Shetland. So my companion there is Elder John Zillers. I know Paul Williams just told you a bit about him. Great missionary, lovely guy, Elder Zillers. He and Paul Williams had worked miracles on Shetland. You know, they'd had a baptism, which didn't happen often up there. But he did have one flaw, and I don't know if Paul forgot or if he was being kind, but Elder Zillers used to talk in his sleep, not like the odd muttered word, like loud conversations with himself. I'm not a light sleeper, but he woke me up a bunch of times. And again, looking through my journal, I found an entry. I'll read it to you, and you can decide whether I was annoyed with him. I've been really tired today because Elder Zillers talked incessantly in his sleep. If he does it tonight, I am going to kill him. I am taking a stick to bed to beat him with every time he does it tonight. And I did, and it did work. Not like I beat him with a stick, but I would kind of gently prod him to kind of stop him from talking. It was an unconventional treatment, but it was effective. So yeah, but he was great. He did lead kind of a sheltered life. He did tell me that the first time he'd ever seen an egg cup was when he came on a mission, and that blew my mind a bit. I was like, well, what were your eggs in then? Before your mission, how did you hold eggs? He just had never seen an egg cup, which was bizarre to me.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And the district on Shetland, I don't know if you probably know, is so there's the missionaries on Shetland and the missionaries on the Western Isles. It's about 350 miles as the crow flies is the distance between the district. And I remember a few months into my time on Shetland, on the phone to the district leader, checking in or whatever, and he said, asking if we were okay. And I don't know if it was the island life was getting to me a bit, but I said, Elder, what if it wasn't? What are you going to do about it? I was like, at best, you were 16 hours away. You were not my first call in an emergency, but
yeah.
I
can relate to that. My goodness.
And the thing about Shetland, you're closer to Norway apparently than Scotland, and it actually sits. I was told, I didn't actually check this. Google wasn't a thing at the time, but it actually sits in the Arctic Circle. So it has weird amounts of daylight. So when I got there in December, the sun would set about 3:00 in the afternoon. So you've got about 6 hours of daylight in the winter. But then by contrast, when we'd be going to bed, like in June, the sun was still up at 10:30, like bright sunshine. So it's a very unique time. I love Shetland. It's a beautiful place. There's no trees. So they used to burn peat. They dig peat and burn that back in the day. And I was told again, you're a maximum of 2.5 miles from the sea, wherever you are on Shetland. And I remember there's a spot that if you stand, you've got the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the North Sea on the other side. It's literally like a tiny strip of land.
Wow.
But it was brilliant. It was so beautiful. I remember I just got like loads and loads of photographs of we'd be driving somewhere like, look at that, sort of trying to take a photograph out of the car, It's just amazing. And the members were so lovely to the missionaries. You know, I went from like no DAs really in Kirkcaldy to like DAs all the time on Shetland. In fact, there was a few occasions I had 3 DAs in a day. We had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was amazing. But yeah, I remember, but it also really windy on especially that time of year. So I remember we were trapped in what turned out to be, we were told after, a hurricane. Winds were over 100 miles an hour. We didn't know. We didn't have the internet. We were just out working, and you should have get blown about. But that's quite windy, isn't it, Elder? Yes, Elder, it is quite windy. So we were not. We knocked this one door, and the guy rushes us into his house, and I'm thinking, yes, someone wants to hear us. So we get inside, and he's like, "Who are you?" We're like, "Oh, we're elders in the church." Out, get out! He basically checked us back out. He only let us in because he thought the wind was going to blow his roof off. So as soon as he saw you we were like, right, out you go. I don't want to hear anything from you. So,
yeah, I was up in Orkney about the same time, like late November, early December, and the gale force winds were intense.
It's because you're just an isle of the sea. You know, there's no land to stop you. The wind is just howling across. And
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And with district meetings were a challenge. Like, this is going to show my age a bit again. Apologies. So what they would do is one companionship would hold a district meeting on their own, and they would record themselves having that district meeting using a cassette tape. Now, do you both know what a cassette tape is? Do you need me to?
We're not dinosaurs, Aaron. Come on.
No, you're young bucks. I'm the dinosaur.
Nah, you're not.
So they would record themselves on a cassette. They would then post it to the other companionship. So 2 days later, you would listen to the district meeting on tape. And again, because I'm old, before Preach My Gospel, we had the missionary guide. I don't know if you ever saw one of those.
Yeah.
And with that, you used to be given cassette tapes of like, this is what a really good teaching experience looks like. This is but the island missionaries had decided rather than buy tapes, they would just record over the missionary guide tapes to save money. So I didn't make that decision, but I was party to it. We did record over church copyrighted materials, but I think we're okay.
That's amazing.
You're not the only one.
But like, well, probably the same for you. Like, you don't see other missionaries. You might speak to them on the phone, but once every moves, you would see. So we would get the ferry down to Aberdeen. So we'd be off the island for 3 days. It was a 3-day round trip. I do remember one time. I don't know what they do now, but one time they flew us. There was a sale. Flights were on sale, and it took an hour to get from Shetland to Aberdeen. The plane was tiny. It was like, I think there were like 2 seats, a tiny aisle, 1 seat. And it was like, right, it was not like assigned seat. It was like, well, you sit that side and you sit that side because it'll balance out.
Yeah, and, I remember that. That's how I first got to Orkney. Is I flew from Aberdeen to Orkney, and I was like, man, this is a Matchbox plane. It was just tiny.
Well, like the plane we got on, like it didn't even have a full like pilot cockpit door. The door was like a 3/4 door. They'd have to like climb into the. I was thinking, what am I flying on?
That's right.
But it was like, I thought, well, it's only an hour. I'll live with this, you know. I'm sure it'll be fine. But I remember as well taking off in the wind that one time. We took off and the wind we were like 40 feet or something in one direction. I was thinking, oof, Heavenly Father knows there's missionaries on this flight, right? Yeah, we're going to be okay.
That's right.
So I'm hoping they fly them down now. But at the time, that was one off. Every other time I came off the island was the ferry. So it was kind of
it was still ferry when we were in the mission more often than not. And I was the zone leader in Aberdeen for the last 6 months of my mission, and picking them up off the ferry, they just looked so shattered. You know, it wasn't even, I was like, I don't know if this is even worth it. Like, because they just come off and they've got like full beards and just look like they've been beat up, you know? It's pretty rough.
Well, you get on the ferry, like, I think it was like 6 p.m. with the idea being, you just sleep and you get there at whatever it is, like 8 p.m. the next day. But you just could not sleep. It was just, I could never sleep. I just sort of lie there, just rocking back and forth. it was a nightmare. But yeah, we would, and then you'd stay in the Aberdeen's only the flat, and it was,
Right.
I think, well, I listened to Tyler Snow, and it was just full to the brim with missionaries. I remember I had to not fight someone, but I had to steal like a couch cushion, so I had something to put my head on, and I slept on like there was this weird part of the flat that had like 2 steps up that went nowhere, and I slept there because that was the only space. It was crazy. But that's where I met Tyler Snow for the first time, Greg Paxton for the first time. They were both serving there. So I know Greg spoke about his trainer was Nathan Headington. So I grew up with Nathan. So he was one of the 11. We were both from the same ward.
Okay.
So yeah, I got to meet, and it was cool because like obviously I knew Nathan growing up, and seeing he'd been out for a while by the time I started serving, and just seeing someone I grew up with being like a really good missionary, a powerful missionary, a teacher missionary. I remember being inspired, thinking, "Wow, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can be the teacher that this guy is."
Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah, I remember we would go on exchanges, and it was great. I got to know. It was great because you stuck with one of the missionary for 6 weeks, so just talking to other people was brilliant.
That's right. So true.
Yeah, and I remember street contacting on Shetland. We used to call it GQ, and I don't know what you guys.
Yep.
GQ,
Same
yeah.
for us.
And but everyone knew the moments. So like in the winter months, there's no tourists or anything. So in the town centre, there was sort of a town centre, a little tiny one, but people would actively avoid us because they knew who we were. I remember Elizabeth walking onto one guy, and he saw him coming, panicked, and just darted into the first shop he came to, which happened to be a women's lingerie shop. But he just should have stayed in there waiting for us to pass so that you wouldn't have to talk to us. It was mad.
Well, the missionaries won't follow you. Maybe
It was right. We
Maybe it
did
was
not
intentional.
follow. We must eat. Yeah. And I was with Dillis for 6 weeks. Only one transfer because he'd been there. He'd been there 6 months at that point, and he needed to be around people again. I think 6 months. I think 6 months in any area is probably a good amount of time, but it's like microwaved on Shetland. It's like it just takes a lot longer. It seems. And he could share his talking in his sleep with another companion anyway. So, but again, because of the ferry thing, so I dropped Gilles off to the ferry, and then I was just on my own for a day and a half. So I would just have to sit there and wait for my new companion to come back on the other ferry. So it was kind of weird being on my own. So sitting in the flat, like, yeah, this is what it's like being alone. But yeah, the members up there were lovely. There was Brother Bob Robertson, who's a brilliant character. He'd have the missionaries, he'd have us for food every week, but he would never call you by your name. He wouldn't call you Elder John. He would like ask you a series of questions about yourself, and then he would bestow upon you a nickname, and that's what he would call you from then on. So like, because I was Welsh and I could sing a little bit, he decided that my name was going to be Bryn, after Bryn Terfel, the Welsh opera singer. So every time we would go there, then we'd be having a conversation. He'd just interrupt saying, "You should be singing, Bryn," and then he'd make me sing him a hymn, and then he'd carry on with the conversation. But yes, a lot. I don't know what you guys experiences. I found the branches to be more. This is just my experience. I don't want to be sweeping, but more missionary focused than some of the bigger wards. I found that they really looked after the missionaries and wanted to help them if they could. And being on Shetland, they just loved missionaries, and they because they knew they could be taken away at any point. So they they all really made an effort. It was lovely.
Yeah, in Orkney it was very similar. I mean, they wanted to make sure that you were alive most of the time, just to make sure that you're out and about doing something and making contact. But there was a lot of help in the ways that they could, and most of it was meals or being willing to go out and teach. And our teachers were so few and far between that I'm sure that was just fine with them. So, but wonderful people, and obviously you could tell some of them could feel like they were burnt out at moments in time, but that's to be expected when you're almost carrying the church on your back in a community, right?
They are the pioneers, aren't they? Let's be honest. They, some of these smaller areas, they eat and drink and breathe in the church because they're trying to build it to have that experience that I grew up in a big ward, took for granted. It wasn't until I went to Shetland I was like, wow, the church is true, even in this tiny mobile building that we're meeting in. It was
Yep, exactly, very true.
So my new companion then was Elder Dallas Deal from Montana. So I'd met Dallas back in Kirkcaldy. So you remember the knife guy, Elder Kinski? So he moved after a month to take his act on the road. I don't know if he joined the circus with the knife go and stuff. I don't know. But Elder Deal was and is just a phenomenal guy. So he was in Montana. He was a rancher. So there was nothing he could do everything. He was like MacGyver. So like he could work with tools. So he's the exact opposite of me. So because he was so kind of handy and useful with things, we could offer service to people, like to get to know them, to build relationships with them. So like we fixed cars for people. Well, he fixed cars for people, and I sat in the driver's seat and started the engine when he told me to. And I would pass him various tools as he did things that needed doing. But he was amazing. I remember one time we were chapping out in this area, and a farmer, he came to the door. He said, "I can't talk to you now, guys. I'm busy," because it was lambing season. So this is like spring, March time. So Elder Deal offered to help quick as a flash because he'd had cattle and sheep his whole life. So there we are, proselyting clothes, and I'm watching a sheep give birth. It's some kind of I tucked my tie in to kind of try and save it from getting anything. And I remember this lamb was born and it didn't move. It just sort of splats on the floor. And I'm like, that's a dead lamb. Elder Deal picks the lamb up by its hind legs and starts windmilling it around his head. And I'm thinking, what on earth is this guy doing with this lamb? Is he? It was like in a hammer thrower starts his. I thought is he gonna see what distance he can get with the dead lamb? What the farmer's just stood there, and I'm thinking, this is what is going on. But it turns out that the centrifugal force kind of helps clear the lamb's lungs of stuff. So he does this for a couple of times, plops the lamb back on the floor, and then suddenly the lamb is up and wanders off. And I'm like, well, you could have told me before you started helicoptering a lamb around your head. You could have warned your companion that you're about to do it. But the type of person who just knows how to do things. That was Deal. He was great. And we got a lot of opportunities to give service like that because, there was a member family who were trying to fix some stuff in their home, and Deal's like, yeah, we can do that. No problem at all. And I'm like, have you seen what I can do? Yeah, but we had lots of great experiences with that. And I remember towards the end of my time on Shetland, the mission president and his wife decided to visit the islands. So they were coming to the end of their mission, and back then the mission president was the district president of all the islands. They weren't part of any state, so they. So this was the first time they'd visited for a while. So we were like, okay. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a district meeting in your flat. Right. Okay. So cue a frantic session of cleaning, and I remember we spent hours cleaning the car because it was gross, and they didn't even look at it. They didn't even do a flat inspection. They just sort of came in, sat down, and there's me trying to teach a proselyting skill to President and Sister Clyde. She did compliment us on how clean our cooker was. I didn't have the heart to tell us because we don't use it really. We eat out or eat sandwiches. So yeah. So yeah, my 21st of June 2000 was my final day on the island, the longest day of the year, and I remember how I felt sad leaving. I didn't expect that. As I know people say, "Oh, you'll grow to love the members, you love the areas," and I sort of but I was literally in tears. A couple of people came, from the branch came to wave me off, and I just thought I was gutted to leave. It had been 6 months, and I probably needed to move on, but it had just felt like home. It had become home, and it's something I never expected. Was that feeling of wanting to go back to a mission area because you loved it so much,
Yeah, definitely.
So it was kind of a culture shock then. So I went from Shetland to city centre Glasgow.
Oh man.
That was June 2000. So my next companion, my fifth companion was Kelly Shirt, from England. So he was from the East End of London. He's proper Cockney, not Dick Van Dyke Cockney, no, proper Cockney. But he was great. You know, we've both been British. You know, we had a shared love of a few things like football and stuff, and it was great. And what was really interesting, being a Welsh guy with an English guy on a mission, is that it kind of disarms people because they're expecting Americans because there's a lot of Americans in the church. And I remember one time we were in a bus station, like walking to get a bus, and this older man walks up to the Shirt. He has this little smile on his face and says, "You need to go back to Utah, young man." And Shirt's like, "Why? I'm from London." And the guy sort of looked there, and I was thinking, "Please ask me. Please, I'm ready for you to ask me." But he just looked really sad and walked away. He was like, "Oh, the one missionary I stop, he's not even American." So yeah, we lived in Mary Hill. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
it was a 4-man flat. So it was a different Elder Larson and Elder Sutton, and then me and Shirt. And I think that was easily the worst flat I lived in my entire mission. I think missionaries had been there for so long, it was starting to show. Everything was tired. The one good thing was that there'd been so many missionaries there. It was kind of a little treasure trove. I don't know if you guys found that where I love that, books
Yeah.
or stuff. But I found like a pair of brand new football boots that I kept for the rest of my mission. I think I found a guitar there as well, which I kept. It was just awesome.
Nice.
But the flat was terrible, like holes everywhere and stuff. And the Glasgow ward was, again, like Kirkcaldy for us. It was split into 4 areas, so there were like 8 missionaries. So I went from no missionaries at all to loads of missionaries everywhere I went, which was cool. And I don't know did either of you guys get to serve in Glasgow at all?
I served in the Glasgow zone, but
Zone.
not in Glasgow proper. I was out in Cumbernauld.
Right.
I had 2 weeks where I was in city center, and it was similar to you, where I came straight from Orkney, like dropped right there, right before Christmas time, and it was absolutely bonkers. I couldn't believe how many people there were.
Exactly. Like I remember the first day we went GQing Glasgow. So Shetland, there's us chasing people, to try and find them, and city centre Glasgow is just loads of people. But the other thing was, because there were so many missionaries, you'd have to kind of divvy up the streets. So like, well, you two have that side of Buchanan Street, we'll go up Sauchiehall Street or whatever. And we would all go on GQ, but we sort of developed this kind of tradition. And after we'd done our GQ, and we'd meet at the Greg's for a complimentary fudge donut or something. I don't know if you guys did. You guys
Great
develop
tradition.
a love of Greg's?
Greg's,
Oh,
fantastic.
I think that's another moneymaker. If somebody opens a franchise of Greg's in Utah, just from Scottish return missionaries, they will make a killing. Absolute killing.
I agree.
So many Americans developed a love for fudge donuts and pasties. It was good to see.
Agreed.
So yeah, it was just the opposite. Just people to talk to everywhere. I remember another time GQing, and there'd always be sort of buskers and stuff on different bits of the street. And I remember these 4 people set up a string quartet and were just playing this beautiful music. The sun was shining, and I was trying to talking to people about the church. And I was thinking, well, this is what it's all about. You know what I mean? This was good stuff. Nobody still talked to me, but it was a nice place to be anyway.
Right.
And I don't know why I got this sort of luck on my mission, but again, with the city centre area, there weren't many members living in it. We had, I think, I think 2, maybe 3 members. One was less active, but she would have us over for DAs all the time. She'd make us a lovely meal, and we'd both get a 2-litre bottle of Lilt. Do you ever have Lilt on your mission?
Yeah, definitely.
So
Diluting juice, right?
yeah, juice or ginger. It was all the same, So, and then we had another sister called Anne, who was a member, and she said to us once, she asked us, "Anne, would you come and do some service, help me do some decorating? So I need some wallpapering doing." So me and my companion, the other 2 missionaries, "Yeah, no problem, we'll come." She said, "Don't worry, I've got everything you need. You don't need to bring anything." So we get there, and she had wallpaper paste, and nothing else. So we ended up having to take a door off the hinges, so we had a flat surface to work on. She had a pair of paper scissors, which we were using to cut the paper with, and a biro from like marking where we needed to cut. It was I don't know how it stayed on the walls, but it stayed on the wall for as long as I served there. So I took that as a win.
Wow,
Some
fantastic.
service was crazy. We used to do work in a charity shop. We used to do all sorts. But one of the great things in Glasgow was on every Saturday we had the chance to play football. So in the city centre in the Glasgow ward, there was like a long-standing football game with some members, load of potential investigators, and less missionaries. So I always used to wear my Welsh rugby jersey, so they gave me the nickname Welshie. Very imaginative. But the pitch, it was it played for so long. There was no grass on the pitch. It was just sort of like this red, sort of gravelly stuff. But we used to play and chat to people, and I was an okay defender in football, so they pick me because they all wanted to be strikers, all the local kids. So I'd be sticking back to defend, and they'd all be up front. But it was great. We'd speak to people, and we got a few callbacks, but I wouldn't say it was the most productive way of finding, but it was good fun.
Yeah, that's true.
And we also found in Glasgow in the city centre an all-you-can-eat Indian restaurant. I remember it was £8, and it had 3 different kinds of curry, and your mild, your medium, and your hot, and sides and everything else. So I remember once we found it, me and my companion, it sort of spread through the zone like wildfire. So a couple of times we go there on P days, like, right, let's test this all-you-can-eat policy that they have. But it was that was really nice. I think Glasgow was the first time I played a fun move calls game. So I don't know, but like for you guys, moves calls night for us. So you have to be in by 8 and basically wait to see if you got a phone call. So the game was called Pint Uno. So the rules were simple. You played Uno normally, but the last person out had to drink a pint of water, and then the loser was the first person who needed to pee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you could, as long as you could hold your water, literally, you'd be okay. And I don't know if you want to hear this, you can cut this out, but one particularly hard fought game, I did pee for over a minute and a half. We all timed each other, and it was, I don't know, it's a pint side drunk, but it was tough. I didn't lose. That was the important thing. I didn't come last. So
there you go.
We had missionaries that did that, and I think some of them ended up in the hospital, like because they were holding it so long. And I was like, we talked to one missionary who's about our era, and he's like, "Oh, I cheated the whole time. Like I was saying I was going to go get a drink of water, go take a leak or something, you know." So, but I remember I got invited to play once, and I said, "Not a chance." There's like, I'm not succumbing to this just because you lot are a bunch of numpties. So it was, but yes, it was still a common thing.
No one was hospitalized. I don't think any of us had that sort of staying power. I was like, but yeah, it was a way to break up the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's funny.
So me and Shirt were together for 3 months, and then he moved on. And then my 6th companion was Elder Jonathan Ritchie from Heber City, Utah. So I was his trainer, but really, in name only, I was his trainer. He was amazing, super spiritual. He'd already technically served the mission because his dad had been a mission president when he was growing up. So he knew missions and missionaries. So I didn't really have much to teach him. I kind of point him in the right direction and say, go be a missionary kind of thing. So city centre was. I mean, you've been there. It's kind of a tough area. I don't think it's the roughest area in Glasgow. I think that honour, at least in my day, went to Easter House.
Yes, definitely.
Where they wouldn't allow sisters to serve.
That's right.
But we were told of, while I served there for 6 months, there were 9 murders that I knew of in our proselyting area. We'd be tracking and you'd see like police were there, and it's like, oh yeah, so and so was murdered. It's fine. So there's us, badges on, knocking on doors around it. But I got to be honest, I never really, I can't remember a time where I felt in danger as a missionary. I just thought, well, the Lord will protect me, and we just get on with it. So that's what we tried to do. And it was kind of a tough area. I remember me and Elder Richie, we'd set up loads of teaching appointments. Like we'd done tracting, chat down loads of doors. We had like 18 appointments set up throughout the week, and every single one of them cancelled on us. Now, back in my day, like you guys probably served with mobile phones, did you? Is that safe to say? Did you guys have mobile?
Yes,
we did. Yeah.
Right. So in my day, you couldn't have a mobile phone. They were not allowed to be had. So you would go home, you'd phone people on the mission, the flat phone, you'd make appointments, and then you just turn up and hope they were there. And if they were, great, and if they weren't, you'd shop around that area. But that was it. You just kind of went and hoped, basically. There was we had some tough times, and I remember feeling bad, thinking I'm trying to train this new missionary, and I'm giving him a terrible experience because we're just not, we're not getting to teach. It's horrible, but
No.
we did have some interesting experiences teaching, though. So I know the media referrals, other people have referred to where the church would actually advertise and say, you can have this free video about the Nativity or about the Lamb of God. And I remember we had one once for the Lamb of God referral, and it was an Armenian family that had moved to Glasgow. I don't know, they couldn't really speak good English, and they were trying to live in Glasgow, so you can imagine the language barrier was huge. But we gave them a video, we watched the video together, we were trying to then sort of teach them, and they said, oh, we hear you do baptisms for the dead. And me and Elder were like, oh great, this is such a wonderful gospel principle. We can teach them, and we'll add them to our teaching pool, and it'll be great. But they kept stopping us, saying, you baptize the dead. I'm like, yeah, it's so great. And we try to explain about temples, but they kept stopping us again and again. And in the end, it took us a while, but they thought that we actually baptized the dead, like took people from the grave, dug them up, and baptized what was left of them. And so, like, through very broken English, they explained this over, it was literally about half an hour. And me and Richie, like, no. Do you know what proxy means? No. Okay, this is going to take a while. So we managed to correct the misunderstanding. But yeah, it's funny how what you assume would be a wonderful teaching experience turned into, so you're digging up dead people and putting them in water. No, we didn't do that. So, but we did have one particular great teaching experience we had with Richie. So we had another media referral from a lady called Ski Laird, and she lived in one of the block of flats, and we went to a flat, we started chatting to her, and she'd had a really interesting life. She'd been a country music singer. She'd sung at the Grand Ole Opry and stuff. And so we were like, oh, so how did you learn about the church? She said, oh, well, my husband was a member for many years, but I never joined. But he's passed away, and I think it's time for me to join the church. So Elder Richard and I are sitting there like, sorry, what? Say that again? You want to join the church? Yeah, what do I need to do to join the church? So we're like, well, these are uncharted waters. This doesn't happen every day.
Okay.
So like, you just want to join. So she's like, well, what do I need to do? I was like, well, we probably need to teach you the discussions, I think. And she said, well, when can you do that? I said, well, we can start now. Well, can I get you a drink and something to eat? Yes, let's do that. Let's have food and let's do the discussion. So I think on that day, we taught her a version of all of the discussions because she just kept asking us questions. We were there for a few hours, and she agreed with everything. She agreed to keep all the commitments. So we arranged a call back, we phoned the Zoni, like, warm up the font, it's going to be good. And I remember walking back to the flat, levitating back to the flat that night, such a spiritual high. And then I was moved to Elgin. Just as that happened. So I had a lot of near misses on my mission. So yeah, I went from city centre to Elgin, which is up, Inverness, Elgin, and then Aberdeen across. Well, yeah, you've served up there. So,
yep. Mm-hmm.
So my seventh companion was Elder Brian Tyler from Arizona. Another great guy, hardworking, really good fun, good sense of humour. I loved serving with him. I think with missionary work, as long as you can get on with your companion, as long as you can have a bit of fun, even when the times are tough, you've still got each other. I know that sounds to people who hadn't served the mission, that can sound weird, but I know you guys know what that means. It's like, well,
We get it. Yeah.
yeah, it's so at this point I was made the district leader, and so it was me and Tyler, and then the two sisters were in Allness. It was sister Amber Red and Rebecca Johnson were up in Allness, and Tyler Snow was the zone leader in Inverness with his companion Elder Clough, Dustin Clough. So we all had, I know Tyler mentioned this, we all had a large area. So between us, we basically covered the top half of Scotland and a bit more. So we had a car, and I'll come back to the car in a moment because I know Tyler Snow has besmirched my name slightly when he shared an experience of mine, but I'll get to that. We're getting close to it now. But we used to have zone meetings in Inverness. Have you been to the Inverness Chapel?
Yeah, right there on the river. It's a beautiful place.
It's the most. So this was December of 2000. I remember it was lightly snowing. It was like a Christmas. I was driving in a Christmas card, driving up to the chapel. It was so beautiful and amazing. I just loved. It was amazing. Just the sights are just again so pretty. And Elgin was a lovely branch. Again, lovely members. And I remember while I was there, the branch president's name was President Butler. He was 80 years old, right? But he looked like he was in his 50s. Like when Tyler's like, "How old do you reckon he is?" And I was like, 55. He's like, "He's 80." He had more energy than the missionaries. He just never stopped. You know, we talked about he was trying to build the church in that area. You know, he was every day doing something, trying to get people. He was just so amazing. And there was an older couple that were too frail to come to church, so we used to go to their home to give them the sacrament. And again, another theme through my mission: when people hear that you're Welsh, there's a stereotype that you can sing. So, you know, they wanted me to sing, so we would sing together, me and Tyler. And I think Tyler got a taste for the singing because he decided we needed to write another song. So I should preface this by saying, so Elder Clough was from Arizona. This was Tyler Snow's companion. He hadn't been out for very long, and he was missing home. He was having a bit of a tough time, bless him. So my companion decided the best way to help him would be to write a song to the tune of Country Roads by John Denver and call it Trunky Roads.
Yes. It's on our YouTube channel.
So Trunky Roads is on YouTube?
Oh, yes, it is.
Right. Well, you know, not to be immodest, but me and Tyler wrote that back in December of 2000. So
well done.
Fortunately, Elder Clough loved it. He made us sing it to him like a bunch of times, and yeah, he saw the funny side of it. And I was in Elgin for Christmas, and I remember my parents sent me, because we were in the UK, they sent me like this big box of stuff, and you know, me and Tyler shared it. And I remember a few days after I got my Christmas box, postman knocks the door, and under his arm he's got a parcel, which is for Elder Tyler, and he says, "I've got this parcel for Brian Tyler." He said, "But you can't have it." He's like, "What do you mean I can't have it?" "Well, there's excess postage due, so I'm not giving it to you. You have to go to the post office and pay them the money, and then you can have it." So we ended up like almost following him to the post office, and I think it cost Tyler about £80 to have the parcel.
Oh my gosh!
His parents had paid however much they paid to send it, and then he had to pay 80 quid just to get his own Christmas presents from his family.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy! Goodness.
So now we've come to the crash. Okay. So, time to set the record straight, because Tyler didn't give the full facts of this experience. So, it was January, it was snowing, and we'd had a media referral way out in the sticks. Like, and you know what it's like up there. They don't, in the UK, you don't grit the roads really. You might grit the main roads, but if you're on the back roads, you're on your own. And we weren't in a big 4x4, we were in a Vauxhall Corsa, you know? Right. So, no snow tyres. You just got your own wits and driving ability. And so I remember we were trying to find this media referral, and it was like a sheet of ice we were driving on. And there was this long downhill, and I was like, oh no. So as we started to go down this hill, I felt the car just skid out. So I'm trying to steer into the skid. Tyler sees this and thinks we're going off the road. So he grabs the wheel and drags it to the left.
Oh no.
So we are now sort of sideways on. So I sort of I remember I hit him to get him off the wheel and sort of turned back. Managed to, so he was slowing down. Now, at this point, Tyler Snow's memory let him down. He told you that I crashed into a stone bridge. I actually crashed into another car.
Oh no!
And that car was carrying a woman and triplets.
What?
I remember. Luckily, we weren't going fast. I should stress that. So we just sort of stopped into the car, and I remember looking. There was a woman, and so her head goes forward, and in the back, like three car seats and three little babies doing this as well.
Oh my gosh!
So I think, oh no, what's going to happen here? So we looked at the cars. Hers was fine. Ours was like concertina at the front. She was fine. The babies weren't injured. But the car was totaled. I wrote off the Lord's car. I will admit that. To be fair, it wasn't that it was so badly damaged. It was that it was so old. They're just like, oh, we're not going to bother. And I remember, so by this time, it was President Wilkinson was the mission president. And I remember thinking, oh, I got to phone him. So I rang him up, told him what happened. This is what he said. Elder Jones, do they have any horses up there? No, President. Do they have any really big dogs that you could maybe ride? No, President. Looks like you walking then. Hung up the phone laughing. So he didn't. I wasn't punished for anything. It was just, it was an accident. I did crash into another person, but everyone was fine. So, and lucky for Elder Tyler, then he then got moved. So, I'm walking in the snow, and I don't even know where he went, but off he went. So at that point, my 8th companion was Elder Neil Snow. So let me ask you this. Are either of you from Utah, grew up in Utah?
I did, yeah.
So do you know a place called Jensen, Utah?
Jensen?
Yeah.
That's a small town if it is, because I'd never heard of it.
So every person I've ever met from Utah, when I've talked about my mission, I've asked them about where they know, because nobody from Utah knows where it's from even. Nobody's heard of this place. I had to look it up. It's basically down by Vernal. It's east of Vernal. So, it's not the end of the world, but you can probably see it from there,
Sure, yeah.
So it was this tiny, tiny, tiny place. So I had Elder Snow, and then as well as Tyler moving, Elder Clough moved. So Elder Snow then had Elder Jones from Idaho move in with him. So we had Snow and Jones in Inverness, and Jones and Snow in Elgin serving around the same time. So that was cool. Elder Neil Snow. What can I say about Elder Neil Snow? He was an interesting character, I'll say that much. For a reason I never ever found the answer for, he had set a goal that by the end of his mission, he wanted to be able to do the splits. Like the Van Damme splits.
Yeah.
So he would get up at 5:30 every morning and stretch and do various things. And every evening for about 30 to 45 minutes, exercising and stretching to try and do the splits. Now, ordinarily, each to their own. We've all got our ways of dealing with mission life. I wouldn't have minded. But it caused a major problem because he was exhausted all the time. He was getting up early. He was doing all this. We were walking everywhere as well because somehow the car got damaged. I don't know. Something happened to the car. I don't want to talk about it too much. But it meant that if and when we go into people's homes, it was winter, it was hot, he'd be falling asleep. So we'd be teaching, and I'd be teaching in principle and look across, and my companion's doing this down the couch, or going like this, sort of leaning, just his eyes his head bobbing, his eyes rolling in his head. So I was like, Elder, you need to get some more sleep. He's like, he said, this is the quote, and you may, if you want to use this, by the time I finish my mission, I want my junk to be able to touch the floor. That was the quote.
Golly. Jeez. I'd like to know, and hopefully, Neil, when you listen to this, we'd like you to come on the podcast and help us understand why that was your goal. Help us understand that, please.
All the things like I want to be a good teacher, I want to learn the scriptures, I want to be able to do the split. I never found out to this day. Crazy.
That's fascinating. Oh, man.
one of the interesting things as well when we were serving together, the area presidency at this point wanted to try and sort of help bring the church out of obscurity, I suppose you could call it, by getting all the missionaries to submit the story to the local newspaper about you. So you'd like who you were, why you were there, where you were from, and maybe a bit about you,
Right.
to kind of maybe get people to understand. So we did Elgin, being a small town, like we submitted our stories, and it was like front page news. They wanted a photo of us. You're on the front page of the. I got it somewhere, like me and Elvis Snow kind of hello with the missionaries. We didn't really get a lot of teaching out of it, but I did get a call from the local rugby team inviting me to play for them. So being from Wales, I don't know if you know, rugby is kind of a popular sport, and I played a bit back home in school and a bit in college. And I said in my story that I played rugby back home. So the local team was short of players, and they rang up and said, "Would you like to come and play?" So I thought, well, I can ask. So I rang President Wilkinson and say, "President, we've got an opportunity to do some finding," and I tried to make it sound as missionary oriented as I could. And to be fair, he listened to me, he heard me out, and he said, "Elder, what do you think?" And I was like, "Well, there's 15 players on each team. That's 30 potential investigators if you include the referee." And he said, "Elder, what does it say in the White Handbook?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, President, I'll tell him no." So it was worth a try. It was worth a try. But,
Oh man. Jack and I did the same thing with basketball when we were there. We went and played ball at the local gymnasium, and I got offered to play on several teams, and I was like, I'm in terrible shape and I'm not here for this, but thank you for offering. I appreciate it.
But you didn't look good over, in the UK. You didn't look good. And I wasn't that good at rugby, but I was like, well, I can probably get away with it, maybe. But yeah. So I was only with Snow for 6 weeks. He continued his stretching, I think, after I left, and I moved again back to Glasgow. So this time I was in Pollock, so sort of South Glasgow.
Okay.
And so it was the south of the river. So my ninth companion now was Joshua Farnsworth. He was also from Utah. And I remember he always used to enjoy telling people that his ancestor invented the television, which, as you can imagine, went down a storm in Scotland, where the inventor of television was from. But apparently, A. Farnsworth did invent a form of TV. But that was his kind of building relationship and trust with people thing.
Nice.
So at this point, they've changed the zone leader slightly. So instead of having a zone leader and a zone leader companion, it was co-zone leader. So I was zone leader with Farnsworth. He was a great missionary. And in fact, when I moved in, we had a few baptisms because of the work he did. So I didn't mind taking a bit of credit for having, been moved away from a few in previous areas. And he only had 3 months left on his mission, and he wanted to go out with a bang. So he wanted to work hard. And initially we were at another 4-man flat in Pollock, but I don't know if it was the mission or the area changed the policy to say they wanted missionaries to live in their area. So like with a 4-man flat, one companionship is always having to travel to proselyte. So like when I was in Glasgow city centre, it was a bus ride to get to our area every day. So Ella Farnsworth had the idea that we should move to like one of the posh parts of our area, because there'll be lots of families there and we can find families to join the church, and it'll be great. And it's a good idea. I was totally on board with this part of the idea. The problem is that there's a budget for the rent, and the budget meant that we couldn't afford to live in the nicer parts of our area. They were out of our price range. But Farnsworth would not be deterred, and he found a flat in a place called Newton Men's, which was a quite posh part of our area, and was within our price range. But it was the smallest flat I've ever seen. Like, too small for 2 people. But being like the new guy, I wanted to build a relationship with my companion, so I thought, okay, let's move in. So I will now give you a virtual tour of the flat, and you tell me if you would have enjoyed living there. So open the front door, turn right. There's a toilet and sink. No bath or shower at this point, just a toilet and sink. Where's the shower? We'll get to that. So 2 steps forward, and you're in the room, which is the living/dining/kitchen room. There was a small couch. I think there was a table and a desk, and that was it. That was all that would fit in there. And then there were steps up to like a mezzanine level, so it wasn't a full length of the flat. There was this sort of half upstairs, and up there was another desk, 2 small beds that were closer together than I was perhaps comfortable with, and a triple fitted wardrobe that ran the length of the wall. And I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Where's the shower? Well, the fitted wardrobe held a surprise. One of the 3 sections wasn't a wardrobe at all. It was a shower cubicle. So you'd have to roll the door of the wardrobe back, and there was like this shower cubicle, and then you have to roll it shut from the inside. So it wasn't watertight, and it wasn't big enough to do this in. Put your hands above your head. It was basically like being in an escape pod of a spaceship. It was like a small enclosure, basically.
And Aaron, how tall are you?
So I'm 5'10", so I'm not that tall.
See,
but I'm not little.
Jack's 6'6" and I'm 6'5". We would have been
no
toast.
Chance. You'd have been like this, because it was 5'10". The shower head was there, and the shower ceiling was there. So like, you couldn't. You'd someone would have had to stuff you guys in. You never would have fitted. It was crazy.
Oh man, we would have moved so quick if that was the case.
Well, I know for a fact. I think the lease. I think he managed to. I think it was a year lease. As soon as that lease was up, they moved somewhere else with more room. I think they got an option on a Matchbox somewhere, which had more room than the flat we were in. It was crazy.
Oh man!
Oh my goodness! Goodness.
Another, and whilst we were in there, then one of the areas got closed down, which I know happens. Moves happen, and the president decides to close an area, which is fine. But it meant that there was a flat then that they wouldn't need anymore, that had to be handed back to the landlord. Now, for reasons I can't remember, rather than the office couple dealing with this, myself and Farnsworth were tasked with meeting the landlord and going through the inventory and deciding how much of the security deposit the mission would get back. So we get there, hello to the landlord, nice enough guy. He'd been renting this flat for a few years to the mission, and I remember he handed us this document that had the full list of everything that was in the flat when he gave it to us. So we go into the kitchen. 6 plates, 6 bowls, 6 sets of cutlery. We're searching through cupboards. 2 plates, neither of which match. Like the odd knife and fork, nothing else. It's just gone. So there's kind of an awkward silence, because we hadn't lived there. Don't forget, this wasn't. We were just bearing the brunt of this. He starts making notes on a piece of paper. So we move in through the flat, and basically everything's the furniture that was there isn't there or is broken. But the crowning event was we go through to the living room, and we find that the missionaries had decided to go all out for Christmas, which was about 4 months before this, and get a real tree.
Oh no!
And the real tree had shed all of its needles into the carpet, which were now in various states of being embedded in the carpet. So the carpet was hammered, it was ruined, it was a shambles. So we just basically spent like an hour apologizing to this guy, this landlord, and then leaving. And I remember I rang the mission office to kind of explain that we'd closed the flat, and the office elder said, "So how much of the deposit are we going to get back?" I said, "You're going to get a bill." I said, "You're going to get no money back. We owe this guy quite an amount of money because the flat is wrecked." I don't know how much they ended up paying, but they had to pay a lot of money. Yeah. So man. we did do spiritual things, I should say. We did proselyte as well, not just flats, hunt and move people. So Elder Farnsworth and his previous companion, Elder Chino, had found these 2 brilliant investigators, Claire and Jackie. They were both they were students, university students. They were close friends. They grew up together, and they were really progressing. They were reluctant about joining the church, but they had members that they made friends with. They came to activities, and they loved the discussions. They loved so much about the church, but they were both brought up staunch Catholic, and you know what it's like. It's like, my family Catholic. It's going to be too difficult and stuff. But I remember we were really excited because everything was going really well, but we just didn't know how to get them to commit the baptism. So we fasted and prayed about it, me and Elder Farnsworth. And I remember at the end of the fast, we both prayed together, and then we went to say like individual prayers. And I remember I had such a strong feeling, almost overwhelming feeling, and I was convinced that they would join the church. I just felt it so deeply. I was sure. And I remember getting off my prayers and saying to Elder Farnsworth how I felt, and he said I felt exactly the same way. And it was powerful, and it was kind of emotional when we discussed it together. But we were like, "It's going to happen. We just need to keep working with them. It's going to happen." And not long after that, Farnsworth, finished his mission. I trunked him out, and off he went home. And I had Elder Sterling Richards, also from Utah. I seem to get a lot of Utah companions. Nothing wrong with that. They were all great, mostly. And Elder Richards was great. It was weird because we were both in the MTC together. He was in the other Edinburgh district, so it was kind of odd that we were serving together because it meant, well, we're not going to be together to the end because one of us has got to move because we're going to end up finishing the same time potentially. So, and I remember when not long after he came, we were kind of asking Claire and Jackie, look, come to church and all that. So they were like, well, we've been to your church loads of times. You've never been to our church. And without thinking, I said, we'll go to Mass. And I thought, I better just check with my mission president that he doesn't mind us like going to other churches and stuff. But he was fine with it. So one Saturday evening, Richards and I, got best suit on, mission tie, mission badge, all on. We went to Mass, and it was pretty nice. I mean, one thing I will say about Catholic Mass, if you've never been, is it's all written down for you. They've got like a playbook that they follow. You can find out where you are, and the priest gives a little sermon, and they have the hymns and the readings and the prayers. It's all there. We didn't go up for communion, but we did enjoy being there. And one of the things they do at the end of the service, they do the sign of peace, which is basically kind of shake hands with all the people around you. So two people like we shook our hands and sort of did a double take, like reading our badges and looking at us and like, what are you guys doing here, sort of thing. But they were really friendly, and it was a really nice experience. And it kind of helped us build that relationship with Claire and Jackie, that we weren't kind of not afraid. That's the wrong word, but it wasn't that we were asking them to lose anything that they had. It was like the church can bring you even closer to Christ than you were before, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember another car experience which I'll share with you. So I had a phone call. Tyler Snow at this point I think he was AP, and he phoned me and asking me what I'd been doing again with the mission car. And I was like, well, what do you mean? So at this point, President Wilkinson takes the phone and he's teasing me because he said, well, you've crashed one mission car, Elder, and now you're speeding in another. I said, well, President, I haven't been speeding. It turns out I had been speeding because they'd had a letter to the mission home that a car had been caught by one of the traffic cameras. I think I was doing maybe 42 in a 40. It wasn't too bad, but because the car's registered to the mission, it goes to them. So they said, well, Elder, we need to confirm who's driving because obviously they're going to get sent the fine. So I thought, well, do I blame my companion? Is that the right thing to do in this situation? But I didn't. I admitted it was me. And so I was thinking, well, I'm going to get a fine. And I think it was like 60 quid at the time and like a few points. But the fine never came. I've never heard anything about it again. I don't know whether the police just thought the better of sending a fine to someone on the Lord's errand or not, but it's gone. 23 years later, nothing. So wow. I'm still safe. So I did crash one car, but I got away with speeding in another.
You're not the only missionary that sped in those cars, I can tell you, Aaron.
I mean, it takes some of those cars to be able to speed in them takes some diligence because they're not the quickest of vehicles, as I'm sure you remember.
Got to be going downhill.
Downhill. Don't mention downhill.
With the
I've
wind
had bad
at your back.
experiences with downhill.
Yeah, some days you wish you had holes in the floor so you could Flintstone it a little bit just to get a little bit more momentum. Yeah. My gosh.
Some of those cars, I tell you. But yeah, so serving in Pollock, I mean, what was good thing about serving in Glasgow is it's easy to get together with missionaries and do zone activities and stuff. So I remember one of my good friends was serving in another Glasgow zone, and he rang. I won't name him because he's not here to defend himself, and he doesn't come out great in the story. But anyway, so he rang me up. He said, "Oh, what we should do? We should get our zones together, and we should play football, play soccer next P Day." Great. I said, where should we? And we arranged to meet up, and I thought nothing of it. Well, a couple of days later, so the day before the next P Day, the phone rings in the flat. President Wilkinson, Elder Jones, what's this about you arranging a football match with Elder Redacted and Elder Redacted? I said, what do you mean, President? I don't know anything about this. So what he explained to me was that my friend serving in the other zone had not only arranged for us to play football, he'd also invited another zone leader in his zone to come as well. And President Wilkinson said, I don't know if you know this, Elder, but in order for me to get 3 zones together, I have to get permission from the area presidency before I can do that. Oh. I said, well, I didn't know that, President, but I also didn't arrange this. I said it was all Elder so-and-so who put this together. So I did throw him totally under the bus, but I'm comfortable with that to this day. And then so President Wilkinson said, okay, thanks, Elder. And he said, I'll call you back later on. Well, after a few hours, so this is like the evening of the night before P Day, he rang back and said, okay, Elder, I'm going to let this happen, he said, but you will start and end this activity with a prayer, and you will have a spiritual thought. And I want you to know if any missionary gets injured during this activity, I will hold Elder, my friend, responsible. I'm like, President, I'm totally fine with that because it's not me. He's going to get in trouble, not me. But I remember we stood there then the following day. There's probably 30 something, 20 odd missionaries stood on a football pitch in the centre circle having a prayer. And I remember I was asked to give the spiritual thought. And I don't know, see, I remember what it was to this day. See if you think this is appropriate. I said, remember, everyone, acts of service are like peeing your pants. Everyone can see what you've done, but only you can feel the warmth.
That's so good.
Short but powerful, I thought. So
play ball. That's great.
Yeah.
Goodness.
So we played football. It was a great day. We had great fun. I remember scoring a 30-yard screamer at the end of the game to draw it 4-4. And Elder, no one was injured. Elder so-and-so survived to serve another day. that was good.
I love it.
But I learned to ask more questions when people arranged to meet up because I didn't want to get in that position again.
Yeah. Very fun.
One of the other great experiences while I was in Glasgow was it was Elder Thomas S. Monson and Elder Joseph B. Worthing visited Scotland while we were there, and they had conferences with all the members, and they had a mission conference in Dundee, and we were all able to go. It was a great day. I mean, being from Wales, I had never met an apostle before. I'd never been in the same room as an apostle before, and I remember my dad telling me so many years ago in the Merthyr ward when the building was built, David O'Mackay, to give him his proper Scottish name, whose mother was from Merthyr, came to dedicate the building, and my dad was only a young man. He said, I can remember, he said, as he walked in the room, he said a different feeling. He was a child, and I never really understood what he meant by that until we had this mission conference and Elder Monson and Elder Worthing in the room. The room kind of lifted. I don't know, I can't say what it was, but I remember feeling different being in the room with them. I had missionaries from companions from Utah saying, "Oh yeah, I saw President Monson, so I'd see him go to his car," and I just remember being blown away that you get to see apostles and prophets like in real life. It was just, it was a miracle to me. I absolutely loved it. And what was great was Claire and Jackie, our investigators, came to the conference, and we I remember we were traveling back on the train, and they were on the same train as us, and we were sat together, and they were so excited about the conference, and they were asking loads of questions about the church and doctrinal questions. And I, we were on the train, but the spirit was really strong. And I remember Claire asked me a question. I can't remember what it was, but I remember looking in her eyes as I answered the question, and I felt and I knew that she knew that it was true, that what I was saying was true, that the church was true. I could see it in her eyes and in her expression. I just knew it, and I thought, this is it. We're going to get them to commit to baptism. We're there. And then I got moved again.
Of course.
So like I said, Richards and I came at the same time. So I told you that the 4-week transfers went to 6-week transfers. So to kind of even it up, I could either go home 2 weeks early, if you call it that, or like 4 weeks late. Those were my two options. And I remember thinking, this is my only chance to serve this mission, So I wanted to stay. And Richards made the same choice. So one of us had to move, and it was me. And I remember feeling really good about my choice until I got the first letter from my dad after telling them what I decided to do. Now, you remember, my dad used to give me my weekly countdown every week.
Yeah.
And it's, you were supposed to serve for 104 weeks, not 108. But he did forgive me. And it was the fact I stayed. It was mentally, but I'll get to that in a bit. So I was really sad to leave Pollack. I'd made great friends with missionaries. The members were great. We had these wonderful investigators in Claire and Jackie. I just didn't want to go. But my biggest disappointment, I think, was that Claire and Jackie hadn't committed to baptism. And I remember feeling I was quite down about it, because not just that they hadn't, but because I was so sure that they would. And I was thinking, well, what do you know about feeling the Spirit? Clearly you aren't in touch. You don't know. How are you going to teach other people how to feel and recognize the Spirit when you can't do it yourself? So I was a bit downcast to leave. And I will jump forward here a little bit so after I got home from my mission, I'd been home a couple of months. I had a phone call, and it was Jackie. And she said, Claire and I are getting baptized, and I would like you to come and baptize me. Would you like to do that? And I was like, yes, I would very much like to do that. And I just, even now talking to you about it, the joy I felt. And I I borrowed my dad's car. He didn't seem to mind me writing off the mission car. And I went up for the weekend to Glasgow, and I got to be part of their baptism. And I will never forget that. It's one of the beautiful experiences of my life. But that's where the Lord's timing comes in. Because, when I was leaving Pollack, all I felt was kind of down because it hadn't happened, but it hadn't happened yet. And that's kind of one of the lessons in life, is that sometimes it's the Lord's time, not ours.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating sometimes. So, I moved to Dundee. So my last area was Dundee. So this was August 2001. In the Bingham Terrace ward. I don't know if either of you served in Bingham Terrace.
No.
What was bizarre for me is that the Bingham Terrace ward building was built around the same time as my home ward building back in Merthyr. So it was the same design. So I'd walk into church and be like, this is like my building, but it's not my building. So it was kind of like preparing me to go back. It was really bizarre. Like I knew my way around before I'd even been in the building,
Yeah.
It was a lovely ward. Dundee, beautiful place. And my companion, this is my 11th companion now, is Elder Isaac Elam from Idaho. He only had 6 weeks left, so I was trunking him out. But he was an amazing missionary. He was so spiritual, so kind, so generous to everyone, so patient with me, and he just cared about people. He was one of the most genuine people I ever knew. I can't remember the Prophet Joe Smith, is it Neil K. Whitney describes as a man without guile? Elder Elam to me was one of those people. He just was lovely, kind. There was no malice in him. There was no unkindness in him. He was just, what a guy. And the Dundee flat was another 4-man flat, because I think they still had time left on the rent and they couldn't find another place. So we were 4 missionaries together, and I was covered. I was 3 months left at this point, I think. So I remember thinking, well, I'd love to have a kilt. I'd love to have that to remember my time in Scotland with. And I remember then going to find out how much kilts cost and thought, well, that's not going to happen because that is mental money, just crazy expensive. But in the other missionary serving in the flat, one was named Elder Dilge, one of the other companionship, and he'd been a tailor back home, and he said to me, "Well, I'll make you a kilt." He said, "Just buy the material, and I'll do the rest." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I can use." He'd bought himself a kilt. He said, "I'll use my kilt as like a template, and I'll make you a kilt," and that's what he did. So I think my kilt is the only one in the world that's lined with Sonic the Hedgehog because he used like an old duvet cover for the lining material.
Great.
But it's
Awesome.
it looks. I mean, I was thinking, is this going to look rubbish? But it is. It looks like a proper kilt. It was amazing. It was super kind.
That's so fun.
It took him hours to do, and I was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he just, yeah, I love doing it. I loved it. So he was, yeah, I've always been indebted to Elder Dilge for that.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, one of the other things that happened with Elam was, well, I know Tyler spoke about it. I think was the 9/11 experience happened, and I remember for us it was a P day. So me and Elam and Dilge and his companion had come back to the flat. I think his companion was, Elder Goodwin. We'd been out shopping, so we come home and we put our shopping away and knock at the door. Our neighbour opposite flat said, "Look, I know some of you are American. I think you should come and see this." So they invited us into their flat, and we walk in, and you can see, one of the towers falling was the first thing you see. It was just crazy. Like you said, we have no mobile phones then, so all we had was like the office phone and like finding out what had happened, and it was just really a strange day. And a couple of days after, and it was what was one of the strangest things was like the difference in how people treated us on the street, missionaries. Not that most people weren't relatively okay towards us, but like people seemed actively more kind and more well disposed towards the missionaries because this terrible thing had happened. And yeah, it was unreal. And nowadays, you just go on your phone and you'd find out what happened. But we had like mission president telling us what we needed to do. Missionaries would have letters from home and stuff. It was just a really odd experience. And I remember how difficult it was for some of the missionaries, Americans who had family or whatever, and trying to work out what happened. It's just, I don't know, it was a really odd thing. And it kind of, again, bonded us with those missionaries because, like, the world changed that day. And even as missionaries, you couldn't get away from it.
It's very true.
Yeah. So Elder Elam went home, and my last companion then was Elder Nick Dell from England. Really nice guy, really good missionary. Helped keep me focused, not get drunky and stuff. And I remember when I picked him up from the train station, we get home, and he said, "Look, I need to tell you something." And I'm thinking, "Oh, this is all I need now." What's happened? But he said, "No, I just need to tell you. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I have to inject myself with insulin 4 times a day." He told me this. He said, "It's not an issue." He said, I can do all the missionary things I need to do. But I just wanted you to not be shocked when you see me shooting up 4 times a day. So, but he'd been living with this all his life, and it was kind of matter of fact to him, and he made it seem like a breeze, and it never stopped him doing anything that we needed to do, except for once, and I will tell you about that time now. So we had a DA plan with a member, and we'd been somewhere, we were running late. So he said, "I tell you what I'll do to save time." He said, "I'll take my insulin now, so when we get to the DA and eat, my levels will be right, because you have to carefully monitor his level." So great. So he injects himself, out we go. It was about a 10-minute drive. So off we go. Massive traffic jam. Bumper to bumper, stopped. We're not going anywhere. So we were just sort of chatting and, passing the time. And suddenly, Dell starts acting really weird. Like, he just laughed out loud, super loud, for no reason at all. And then he sort of just slumped in his chair. And then he just starts talking. It was like he was drunk. I was like, what on earth is going on here? And I remember that, again, he told me that first day. He said, "Look, if my levels drop too low, I will start to act strange." He said, "You just need to get me to something with sugar in." And I'm thinking, well, I'm sitting in a traffic jam. We can't go anywhere. what am I going to do? I was literally like rummaging in the car around me, and I found a half-eaten packet of biscuits. I don't remember buying them. I don't know how long they've been in the car, but I thought hyperglycemia is worse than food poisoning. So I just started feeding him biscuits, and he just was eating biscuits. And then in a few minutes, he was fine. But I was freaked out. He said, "Ah, don't worry, he's fine." And he's carried on eating biscuits. He was really blasé about it.
Wow.
I mean, at one point, he even had me injecting him. He said, "Do you fancy giving me my injection today?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh." So he would just like pinch the skin on his stomach, and he'd just jab it in, and that was it. So it was crazy.
Did he have his medication from like the NHS, or did it come from the he said from the States? So
No, he was English. Sorry, yeah,
England. That's right. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, nowadays it's more advanced. But what he would have to do, he'd like do a blood test, and it would tell him his level, and then he'd like arrange his dose based on that. And like nowadays, there's a sister in my ward who's again type 1 diabetic, and she's got like this monitor which kind of just gives her the right dose automatically. But as I said, these were olden times. It was a bit more of a manual effort for.
That's amazing. Wow.
But the Dundee was wonderful. We had great zone, and we had a wonderful sister companionship. I won't name their names, not because they weren't great missionaries, but because I don't want to embarrass them with the following story. So they were brilliant sister missionaries. They were great teachers. They were hardworking, but they had this habit of like hugging their investigators, like female investigators, and their kids. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal, but I was like, maybe don't do that so much. And they were like, but it's just our way of building relationships. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, they called us up one day. They're both feeling really ill, and they'd like a blessing. So the district leader, his companion, me and Del went over there, and we give them a blessing. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to use your priesthood, etc. So thought nothing of it. We go about our day. Later that night, call from the sisters. And again, I don't know. I think my desk in the flat had the phone. I seemed to be the guy to answer the phone all the time. So I said, it was Sister. I nearly said her name then. It was Sister so and so. I said, "How are you in companion feeling, sister?" "Much better, thank you so much. But there is one thing we need to tell you. We have caught nits from one of our investigators' children." So they caught hair lice from.
Oh my gosh!
I said, "Well, what do you mean? How do you know that?" She said, "Oh, well, it must be one time when we were hugging them." But so I was about to kind of maybe reprove me times with a little sharpness, but then it dawned on me we'd all been with them that afternoon, and we'd all laid our hands on their heads to give them a blessing. So the four of us then, just the rest of the evening, like, I mean, I had hair then, and more hair than I do now. So we were like trying to find, I think you're okay, I think you're okay. Everyone's having showers and stuff. And then suddenly your head would itch. You're like, "Oh no, have I got it? Quick, what's going on? Luckily, the four of us were fine. But the sisters had spent like the evening just combing lice over their hair. And one of the sisters had like long hair. It was an absolute nightmare for them. So I didn't give him a hard time. I did give him a bit of a hard time after it was all fine. But
gosh,
that's what you get for hugging people. Yeah, it's crazy. But they were brilliant. They were hard workers. They were just great. It was just an unfortunate experience, which I think they learned from.
Yeah.
And there's only the area in Dundee included St Andrews,
yep,
quite posh area, famous golf course. And one PD got a call from one of the sisters asking, could they go to St Andrews because it was in our area and they wanted to go see the sites. Yeah, of course. Is there anything in particular you're looking at? And she sort of pauses there, and she said, I don't want to tell you. You'll make fun of me. I was like, well, you got to tell me. I got to know now. So she said, well, I wanted to go and see Prince William. Prince William, who's now, the Prince of Wales, was studying in St Andrews around this time in the university there. She said, well, I always wanted to be a princess when I was little, and this will be the closest I'll ever get to. So I want to be able to see if I can see a prince. I was like, are you planning on proposing or murdering this prince or stalking him in any way? She's like, no, I just want to be able to say I saw a prince. I was like, oh, okay, sister, you go and enjoy yourself. And that was the site she wanted to go and see. One of the sites that we enjoyed, there was an amazing all-you-can-eat Mexican restaurant in St Andrews. So if I was kind when we were on exchanges, I would take one of the other missionaries there. It was amazing, really good stuff.
I knew the moment you said they were going to St Andrews that they weren't going to see the golf course. It was definitely Prince William. That was
a guarantee. They were not golfers.
But
funny. My last transfer, to be fair to Delve, he did keep me working. The last 6 weeks can be tough if you're not working hard. And we tracked it into this older lady called Anne McKelvey. She was amazing. First time we got in with her, gave her a book a moment. I'd love to read it, and she read it, and we went to go and see her. She prayed about it, and she committed to baptism, and she accepted, and we helped her to stop smoking. It was like textbook, start to finish, like with this lady. And I remember one of my favorite days when I served in Dundee was about a week or so before the end of my mission, and we had a zone conference. And the rule back then was that if it was your last zone conference, you could wear your kilt. And now, thanks to Elder Dilge, I had a kilt, so I wore my kilt and my mission tie, and I had a black jacket. And me and Delve did like the teaching skill, and it was all going really well. And I did accidentally flash my garment at everyone. So when I got up to share my farewell testimony, I had to climb like over a few people on the stand, forgetting that I wasn't in trousers. So the first few rows got a glimpse of my covenants at that point. And then during the lunch break, one of the other missionaries brought a guitar and asked President Wilkinson if I could play some of the songs we had. So in the end, I wrote them down. So I said we had Pray Tonight. I don't know if you've heard Commit Me, Baby, one more time.
Oh, yeah, it's on there.
Stuck in North Glasgow with You.
Yep.
It was Go and Pray by Lenny Kravitz.
Yep.
I'm a Believer, the Monkees.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Imagine, John Lennon, and Trunky Roads was obviously the.
I feel like I need you to sign my album.
Yeah, exactly.
So these are all on YouTube, are they?
Yeah, there's a playlist. If you go on to the S.E.M podcast, one of our playlists is all those songs. So check it out. You'll appreciate it. And it's kind of fun for you to consider the fact that I went home in 2007 and we were still passing these songs around because it was enjoyable, but it was missionary. And so
it sort of bridged that line. It was mission appropriate, but it was something a little bit fun. And a little bit funny, So, and we had great times, making these songs just because it was just a bit of fun, you know what I mean? And it kind of recorded what mission life was like a little bit,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
You'll have to let us know if you're the actual voice on our recordings there.
Yeah, exactly.
I will record, and I'll drop you an email to let you know.
Great.
Sounds great. Love it.
So that was good fun as well, singing those songs. And then after zone conference, Delve and I went back to Dundee, and we actually baptized Anne McKelvey together. She was a little bit older, and she was a little bit frail, and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to kind of get down and up. So both of us in the font, in the water together, being part of this lady's baptism. And I remember I said I could have gone home, 2 weeks early, and if I'd done that, I never would have met Anne, and I never would have had this chance to be part of her conversion. So I know it was definitely, the right decision for me to stay. And it just, again, these experiences, they just impact your life forever. Those feelings and that love you have, it grows stronger every time I talk about it. So yeah, my last proper day as a missionary was the 5th of November 2001. Which, as you know, you may remember, is Guy Fawkes Night, bonfire night. So
fireworks for your going away party.
Exactly, my last proselyting day ended with a big fireworks display, which was nice, a nice touch. And one other thing on that moves, one of the areas in the zone was closing, so there was a car area that was closing. So there was a car that needed to get back to Edinburgh. So I had a great idea. I phoned President Wilkinson. I said, President, you need to get a car back to the mission home. I need to get back to the mission home. why don't I just drive the car back? It's only an hour or so. And I could hear him thinking on the other end of the line, thinking, do I allow this guy who's crashed one car, speeded in another, be on his own to bring? And he said, Ella Jones, I believe this is his words, I believe I can trust you. And he let me do it. So there I was. And as a UK missionary, the other reason it was good for me is that I had accumulated stuff on my mission. I knew I didn't have to worry about a plane. My parents were going to come and pick me up in the car. So I left on my mission with one suitcase and a suit carrier. I was coming home with 2 suitcases, a big box of stuff, an acoustic guitar, and a kilt. And I didn't want to get all that on the train, So there I was, driving down the motorway, blasting the soundtrack to the garden, sunglasses on, just thinking I was the kiddie. And I remember getting back to the mission home, and just feel like the 2 years have flown. I just couldn't believe it was over. And just what I know I'm talking a lot, but one other thing, just so when you leave from your mission, obviously people got to go to the train, getting on planes, and I was chatting with one of the other missionaries out of the castle, and suddenly this car comes up the drive, Welsh flags flying, the Welsh national anthem blasting from the sound system, which you could hear from inside the mission home. The castle turns to me and goes, "Who the heck is that?" I said, "That's my mum and dad." I went out to meet them. My mother just grabbed me and hugged me, and it was, said goodbye to all the missionaries. And one thing I didn't say at the beginning, I've got 3 sisters but no brothers. But serving a mission, I found so many people I would call them brothers, and I'm going to love them forever. They just my brothers, and these sort of things, when you hear how people are doing and you see that they're doing well or they've had good experiences, it just brings me joy to know that as Alma and the sons of Mosiah said, they're still my brothers in the Lord. It's wonderful. And one final thing, so sort of interesting. So my stake president had a son who was finishing his mission the same day as me, and he was going to meet him in Ireland. So he wouldn't be able to meet me to release me. So he said, "What I'll do," he said, "just ring me and I'll release you on the phone." So I'm in the back of the car, leaving Scotland, ringing the the stake president. He said, "Right," he said, "take your badge off. You're no longer a missionary, and I'll see you tomorrow." So I remember putting the phone down, loosened my tie, took off my badge, and said, "Put some secular music on, please, because now I'm allowed to listen to it." And,
Wow.
and that was it. Drove back home from Scotland.
That's a pretty surreal moment, right? Where yours was a little non-traditional, but it's one of those moments where I got chills just when you said that, because it's a finality of what you spent so much time and effort in doing. And amazing that you shared that. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. Thank you.
This whole thing has been amazing, Aaron. Like, I've enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And hearing the experiences, finally knowing the author of some of those songs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We're very fortunate to be in the moment to learn this. I'm sure that those that will listen will be like, "Wow, we listen to those songs how often?" I mean, it'll be great that we can put a name and a face to it. That's wonderful.
If only I found a way to monetize this. You know what I mean?
We've thought about it many times, but we didn't know who to give the credit for. So we just kept it under the carpet.
Yeah. One other, I know you also asked people about like experiences with the mission president. So one other thing I wanted to tell you about President Wilkinson. So the first zone conference, when he came into the mission, he gets up on the pulpit and he says, "Elders and sisters, I want you to know that there's some things that I can do that you cannot." And then he invites his wife up to the pulpit and he full-on kissed her in front of the whole zone conference.
That's amazing.
And he's like, "That's just one of the examples of things that I can do that you can't," he said.
Flaunting it full on. That's rough.
And I remember thinking, because obviously the President Clyde before was quite strict, quite stern. I remember thinking, this is going to be a bit different. But he was, again, they were both equally inspiring, so full of love. And I was lucky enough to go, when he finished his mission, I went up to we had a farewell for the Wilkinsons, and it was great. And again, cool. Seeing them on Facebook or whatever, it's just wonderful to keep in touch. You know?
That's great.
Fantastic, man. Well, Aaron, you've mentioned a lot of missionaries we haven't talked to, some we have. So we encourage you, when this is published, to share it out to your network and help us expand and get more.
I wrote them down too, so make sure you let them know that I'm going to be reaching out to them so that they can come on, or you can do it for me. I mean, it's probably easier.
There's a bunch of them I'm in touch with on Facebook and stuff, and there's some I'm not, but I definitely will, because there's some, you know what it's like, you serve around missionaries and you just love them, and you just, to hear them share their experiences, I'd love to hear. So I definitely will.
Great.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate that. We appreciate you taking the time to come on and visit with us. And you said it great at the end about the brotherhood that is built through serving a mission. I come from the same sort of family. I have 4 sisters and no brothers. So definitely feel that. And I guess Zach too. He's got 1 sister and no brother.
I have 1 sister. So. That's true. I mean, this is a brotherhood, a sisterhood. It's everything together that comes from that special land. So thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, and we want to express our love to you, Aaron, and we love everybody in Scotland who served there. We love the land, and we love you. So,
and we hope that in the near future we'll get to see you on the grounds of the temple in Edinburgh.
Yes. Oh, that was what I bet you were the same when you heard that. You're like, yes.
Oh, it was just floods of tears. It was unbelievable waiting it seems like a long time for many of us, but you know, like I can only imagine those that I know that served in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s that have been waiting that much longer to see it happen, and such a miracle to see it.
And some of the members, like when I served on Shetland, it was like it would take them 2 or 3 days to get to Preston, you know what I mean?
Right.
Aberdeen, it was like a day or two. So the fact it'll now be, you know, closer, it's going to be, I can't wait. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, agreed. It's so fun.
You'll have to do a live broadcast from there. You know, get over there and we'll just have a live podcast session with everyone.
I mean, we could certainly make it happen. The wonders of technology, just throw it live on YouTube, and anybody who can't be there, we can certainly do that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
great idea, Aaron. But you can't have credit for it. We'll give you credit for the songs. Just
Okay, you can have that one. You've done all the work of the podcast, to be fair. I'll give you that one.
Oh, you're good. I love it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Aaron, and we'll be in touch going forward.
Yeah, Aaron, we'll give you a hearty cheerio, brother. We love you, and we'll talk more soon, all right?
Thank you both so much. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
All right, then. Have a good rest of your day. Cheerio, mate.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.